Hi, this is Paul, and today I'm going to do kind of an interesting thing with Joe. Joe has his own channel, and so we're going to do sort of a randos conversation first, and then we're going to stop the recording. I'm going to put the randos conversation on my channel, and then Joe's going to do the kind of work that he's doing for his channel, and we'll do that, and then maybe after it's been on his channel a little while, I'll share it on my channel too. So, yeah, Joe, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So from Cleveland, basically been here all my life. I had a little quick stint in Boston for a little bit for school, but then came back pretty quickly. So yeah, a Cleveland kid through and through. So I guess, I was watching a couple of your other videos. It looks like a lot of people start from the beginning, right? So
Yes, indeed.
yeah, so yeah, raised Catholic, still am a practicing Roman Catholic. And a very, again, kind of like a common thread with a lot of people in this community, grew up in church. And, in the Roman Catholic scene, like other scenes, but in the Roman Catholic community, obviously your ethnicity plays a big part into it. So
Yep.
my family came here really in the mid 50s, early 60s from Sicily. So both my parents are Sicilian. So I grew up in that in the ethos of the Italian Catholic American tradition. So everything that you can think of. I mean, from Jersey, I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Lots of Italian Catholics in
Oh
the
yeah,
Patterson area, tons of them. In
yeah,
fact, if getting back with the cliches, I mean, part of what was fun about watching The Sopranos was all of the North Jersey
oh yeah,
locations.
yeah. No, it's some of the stereotypes are very true, very real. But yeah, grew up going to church every Sunday. As a kid, never really had any ambivalence towards it. I went to Catholic school my whole life, and still stick with a lot of the same, not tons actually, but a core group of friends that I met from being a young Catholic kid in Catholic school, I still keep to this day. And what the interesting journey has been, though, is that I've stayed Catholic, and again, as people are watching this, I'm sure I'm sure their experience too is that maybe they have a group of friends who kind of split from them, and that's where we went. And it's funny, I talk a lot of my good friends. I keep my close circle of friends. One, I guess, close circle of friends are basically all what they would consider atheist, or I would say I tease them all the time. They don't even know what they are, but that's how they would consider themselves. And they all got pretty active. They all have pretty active jobs in STEM fields. I have some good friends that are engineers, research scientists, things like that. And I always joke. So like I said, we're in Catholic school together, and I always joke. And a lot of them, ended up going to public school after 8th grade. And I always tell them, it's funny that if I had a conversation with you, right? So the last math class I took was algebra 2 in like junior year of high school, right? So that's my mathematics knowledge for the most part. The last science class I took was chemistry, junior year of high school. I kind of skated by taking like these weird credits in college that counted as science or math classes. So yeah, for the most part, right, my last real experience in mathematics and science was junior year of high school. And I think it's so funny sometimes, if I was to go to a cocktail party with them and their colleagues, and I was trying to talk shop about science, about mathematics, they would think, who the heck is this idiot, right? Who is this guy who has the comprehension of algebra 2 and chemistry, basic high school algebra 2 and chemistry, right? I would be a laughing stock. They would look at me like I'm a fool, and right, they would laugh me out of the party. But I always rib with them, and this is something that I constantly think about is, those same friends, right? I was in religion class with them in the 8th grade, and that's the last religion class that they got, right? So it's funny that, okay, so they can go to a cocktail party with me, or they can when I invite them to my circles of my Catholic friends or my Catholic outings, they're trying to talk shop and say, oh, the existence of God can't be real for X, Y, and Z, or they're just trying to approach it in such a in such a crazy abstracted way that I look at them and I go, guys, what the hell are you talking about? You're not making any sense. And it's so interesting that just because it's in the realm of philosophy or religion, they think that they can be part of the conversation. The thing is, they can be a part of the conversation. I think that's exactly why religion is so fascinating, and why I think that a lot of people, even who claim that they're atheists, maybe aren't just atheists, because for the very fact that you believe that you have just the same place at the table in this conversation, I think is saying something. I think it says how much God really possesses us in a positive way. It's inescapable. So I always find that to be funny. It's like, yeah, you know what, man, I was sitting next to you in Mrs. Noga's 8th grade religion class with you, and I know we didn't learn that much. Okay, so I don't know what I don't know if you can really be talking to me the way that you're talking to me right now. But so in college, I went to this little liberal arts college, Hiram College. It's in Ohio. James A. Garfield was both the president and a student there, so that's really our only claim to fame. So I went there, and again, I've always been more interested in the humanities, in literature. I noticed that pretty early on, obviously, since I said that the last time I took a science and math class was junior year of high school. So I went to school, and I went to college, and I knew I wanted to pursue something in the humanities. But like most young people, especially I think like most young men around that time, I started to grow a little suspicious with my faith. And I remember I was thinking about this a couple days ago, because I was like, oh, what anecdotes do I remember having as a child with faith? And I remember kind of around 17, 18 being on the fence about religion. So even if I had a positive, and again, I had a very positive upbringing. I'm blessed and still happy that they're around. I'm blessed with a good family, good mother and father. I don't think religion was ever forced down my throat. Again, being an Italian Catholic, it's kind of like a way of life. It's kind of like your movement. It's a movement. It's a dance. So yeah, it was never really, I never had a horrible ambivalent relationship growing up. But again, around 17, 18, when I was reading more, I got more interested in philosophy. I got more interested in psychology. And I've always been of the culture, I would say, in high school. So I wasn't, I did very typical high school things, kind of goofing around with my buddies, things like that. I knew what culturally was going on, so I wasn't sheltered in that regard. So again, yeah, like for a lot of reasons, I started questioning my faith, started questioning Catholicism specifically. And, again, obviously this is in light of like the Priestley molestation scandal. So this was also part of like the zeitgeist and the conversation. And I remember just watching this one specific PBS documentary about monotheism. And I don't know why, but that PBS documentary on monotheism changed my life for a little bit. And I walked away from it and I was like, oh, well, monotheism can't be real. And so, and I was that easily persuaded. So,
well, there's an interesting relationship between your 8th grade story, which I really enjoyed, and the PBS special, which is that generally speaking, these types of documentaries on TV are full of people with lots of academic credentials with respect to religion, but they could still be exactly like you just described.
Yeah, no, I know. It's so, and that's something I'll get to that I learned. So I had some interesting footing. Again, always interested in the humanities, very speculative now of my faith. And we're talking right now, when did I go to college? Undergrad, 2010 to 2014. Okay. So I went into college actually proclaiming that I was an atheist. So again, in the same line as my 8th grade buddies. And However, the difference between my 8th grade buddies and me was, again, still interested in philosophy, still interested in the humanities, very interested in religion still, but like on this like sociological framework of it, not necessarily this like my heart's, you know, caught on fire about it, or like any interest there in that regard. So I remember I took a psychology course in college and I thought that it was very boring. And I was like, well, I don't want to do this. And
a lot of intro to psychology classes in college are very boring.
Very boring. I was so excited. I actually went in like, I'm going to be a psychology major. And I went and I took that first psychology class and I was like, what the hell is this? I was like, what are we even talking about? They were talking about science. And I was like, listen, I haven't taken a science class in 2 years. What do I know? But so I started taking some religious studies courses, and I got really interested in that. Now, Hiram, although founded right on, I'm off the top of my head right now. I feel so horrible. I hope no Hiram people watch this, but I forget exactly who founded what denomination founded Hiram. But although Christian in Genesis, what ended up happening, like a lot of small liberal arts schools, is they kind of threw the Christian classes to the wayside. And
they're disciples of Christ.
Disciples of Christ, right? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Disciples of Christ.
And it's helpful to understand what, some of these churches that sort of became the main line. Disciples of Christ is, they're one of these older, they're one of these Protestant denominations in America that was, Ohio would be a very important place in terms of their formation. So so very interesting. Keep going.
Yeah. So where was I? Okay. Yeah. So although, founded by the Disciples of Christ throughout the years, obviously from 1840 to 2010, right? So they kind of ditched the whole, Christian tradition, and most of my 95% of my religious studies classes at Hiram was in Buddhism. And so I was on the avant-garde. I knew about Kundalini yoga before anyone. And I was 17, 18, and I was like, I know about Kundalini yoga. And now it's blowing up. In Cleveland, it's like every other, in every hip neighborhood, every other storefront, it's like a Kundalini yoga place. And I'm like, man, I messed. I could have been having like a pretty lucrative small business right now. So I did that, and I was, much to my father's displeasure, I go home and I'm like, Dad, I think I'm Buddhist now. Just stuff like that. Again, my personal is the universal. This is something very this is part of the cultural ethos, right? And so I took a lot of Buddhist classes, a lot of classes on Hinduism, and then my Bible courses were very boring. Nothing inspiring, nothing that I could even actually quite grasp to. And so I declared my major, and I was kind of like floating. And when it comes to like my personal side spiritually, my prayer life was non-existent, and I was kind of into this weird new agey Buddhist Hindu kind of mix. Didn't actually even know what the hell I was even saying with that, but just kind of like the regurgitation of textbooks, or the regurgitation of and I still actually, my professor that I had for a lot of these classes, I still like. I really do have like a lot of positive feelings towards. So he never steered me in the wrong way, like to some degree, but I wasn't being like spiritually fed. And so I've always been academically, I've never, well, how would I put this? I have some academic talent. So like, the schoolwork wasn't always as hard. So I decided, well, let's pick up another major. And I was bouncing around between history and art history. And this was around like mid sophomore, early junior year. And I remember looking at the credits that I had, and I remember looking at the time that I had left, and I said, oh, well, you know what? I'm interested in all these things still. I could pick up another major, and I could even pick up a minor. So that's what I did. So I started taking some history courses and some art history courses. And it's crazy, like the combination of those history courses and art history courses was the thing that brought me back to my Catholicism. My art history classes specifically. So whenever anyone asks me, yeah, how did you become Catholic again? I will say Hiram College art history. That's how I became Catholic again. Just looking at these beautiful things, and when I say looking at these beautiful things, I mean, you realize a lot. So you look at beautiful things and you obviously start to question, well, what makes a beautiful thing a beautiful thing? And then that goes up the scale, and then that gets into more ontological questions. And then that ultimately led me back to Christ, that led me back to the Catholic Church. Just being able to witness beauty, not only in the expression of fine art, but also beauty in the expression of word, beauty in the expression of literature. Another thing that got me deeply into my faith again was taking a medieval literature course. And I remember just being absolutely thunderstruck by Dante. And not just like his Inferno, or not just like the Divine Comedy in general, but really a lot of his work. And Dante really helped bring me back to my Catholicism, and has played a significantly influential, has been sincerely influential on my life. So much so that my wife and I are blessed to have a 15-month-old, and we named him Dante. So So Dante's had a big part in my life. So after college, senior year, I'm pretty actively Catholic, and it's tough. It's hard. It's hard to find your footing again, now we're talking like 2013, 2014. So it's hard to find your footing. It's hard to find people at a small liberal arts college that want nothing to do with religion, that even if they don't have like the lexicon for it, like pretty depressed or pretty nihilistic, pretty black pilled, I guess, to put it. So, it's an isolating thing. So like my Catholicism was kind of just more inward, and I was kind of going to church. It's hard when you don't have a car. It's hard when, your small liberal arts college doesn't really offer too many faith-based groups or anything like that. But after undergrad, I decided that I wanted to pursue this further. Again, I was in pretty fine academic standing. So I decided to go on and get a master's degree in systematic theology. And I did that for 2 years, and I had a really great experience doing that.
Where?
At a Cleveland school, John Carroll University.
Okay.
And the claim to fame, I'm just going to give you all these claim to fames for these universities. The claim to fame for John Carroll is that it's for a Division III school, it's a pretty serious pipeline to the NFL. So Don Shula of the Miami Dolphins went there. Some other heavy hitters went there. A lot of people on the New England Patriots in the front office, they were John Carroll grads. So again, that's John Carroll's claim to fame. So, and John Carroll, a good institution, Jesuitly sponsored. So had some experience with the Jesuits there, and took a lot of great courses, like I said. And again, that's when it really gave me a language, gave me a group, gave me a community to express my Catholicism in and with. And after that, I decided, the plan was always to apply to PhD programs. And I did not think I was a serious candidate from my Hiram College background in systematic theology, when they're going to say, oh, here's a class on Kundalini yoga, here's a class on Longchenpa, here's a class on, whatever. So the plan was to go to John Carroll and to do my master's there, and then start applying out to other places. However, that didn't happen because, I was dating this girl at the time, and this girl now is my wife. And
those women.
uh, I know. So I was dating this girl at the time. This girl now became my wife, and her and I, lucky enough, we've been dating since about freshman year of college, and so she stuck with me.
Was she raised Catholic too?
She is Catholic.
Okay.
That was one of my prereqs for getting married. Is it? I mean, I'm being serious. Like for me, it was very important to marry a Catholic woman, and so yeah, my wife is an active Catholic, and so I really actually consider. I tell her this often. I go, I think my wife's a better Catholic than I am in many regards, but I guess I would rather have that, right? And I know she would say the same thing for me, so maybe that's why our marriage works. But so I wanted to marry her, and I wanted some money, and I was also worried about the prospect of getting into programs. My best friend actually from undergrad, he ended up getting into a PhD program, and we would always talk about right after undergrad, and we would always talk about the prospects of. And he was at a good university, I'll put it that way. And even for him, he was like, well, I don't know if I'm going to get a job. And so that, and being away from my family, again, being, Italian American, it's kind of a no-no to go away from your family. So with the money, the job prospects, and then just like, and I'm very close to my family, so I didn't want to leave them. There was this job opportunity that showed up, and I took it. I interviewed and I took it, and that job opportunity was teaching Catholic theology at a Catholic private school in the Cleveland suburbs. And so I was actually a theology teacher from 2016 until last year. And so I taught in my time at the high school that I was at. I taught grades 9, but I mostly taught grades 11 and 12. And so I had a lot of great interactions working with 14 through 18-year-old, both boys and girls, because it's a co-ed school. But particularly given my personality and my strengths, forged a really serious and meaningful relationships with some of those young guys. I also had the opportunity to coach soccer there, and so really just great opportunities in getting to know them, and getting to know them as people, getting to know them as faith-filled people, and really realizing just how insanely difficult it is to be a young man or a young woman in Christ at this particular time. I mean, I thought it was difficult when I was in high school, 2006, 2010, and I'm just like, whew, yeah, I had it real easy. We didn't even, simpler, I guess. So I've really like learned and got to know and got to counsel the struggles of how young people who kind of want to be Christians, kind of don't want to be Christians, unsure about whether or not they should be Christians. I got to know a lot of just information on that. And I think I did a good job there. I was well liked. I would say probably at the end of now that I quit last year, and I'll get to why in just a second, but I quit. I probably give myself like a B+ grade, and I was probably a B+ teacher. I was more liked than I probably should have been, but yeah, a B+ teacher. I would say that. And I still have a lot of close relationships. Even like I had a former student who's at Ohio State now, gave me a call just Sunday. And I gave out my number. I was particularly close with like 5 guys who graduated last year. So with them graduating and me leaving the school, I felt comfortable keeping in contact with them. And he called just to get my advice on some things about, hey, should I, quite frankly, it was like, hey, what do you think? Here's the deal. Everyone's telling me I should hook up with as many women as I can. I don't know if this is good. What do you think? And so, I realized at the time that I hold this very valuable well, I'm just like a very valuable asset in their lives. And I don't want to make it like a power thing, because it's not a power thing, because, you know, this is the Holy Spirit flowing through me, helping young men reach really their apex potential. And so, you know, he called me and I gave him my advice, and in short, no, don't. That was, I always gave an end of the year speech when my seniors went off to college, and I gave them like 3 pieces of advice to be successful in college. And one of the pieces, I think how I made it was like 2, and they were academic, and the third was social. And I just said, listen, don't have sex in college. And I gave it for a spiritual reason, but I also gave it a practical reason. And I said, listen, you're going to get to my age. I just turned 30. And so at the time I said, you're going to be 28, 29. And here's the deal. You might be single. And here's the deal. You might like, and really, you know, you might like them. They might be a great person. You might find them attractive. Another 28, 29, 27-year-old young man or woman. And you're gonna be into each other, and then you're gonna have a conversation. That conversation is gonna be, well, by 28, how many people have you slept with? Because that's inevitably gonna be a conversation. And if you're gonna be like the average college kid, and I've had sex with 8 people. I've had sex with 7 people. For some, I've had sex with 15 people. Now, there's a practical element to this, because maybe that young man or young woman doesn't want to be with someone who slept with 15 people, even if that young man or young woman really likes you. Right? Maybe for a practical reason, by 28, 29, maybe they've matured a little bit and they said, I don't want to do that. So not only and there's a lot of spiritual implications on why you shouldn't do that either, but I noticed with the young men and the young women in high school, this was always hard. You try to give them the practical first before you give them the religious. That's and some people will disagree, but that's what's worked with me, and that's what worked for me in the past. So I gave them the practical, and then I gave them the spiritual. And I was actually delighted that at least those kids seemed to listen to me. So so that's good.
Did you have any of them? Now you did this for a while. So did you have any of them come back to you after their 4 years of high school and say they took your advice or didn't take your advice? Maybe it'll take another decade before some of that feedback.
So I've had some emails. So I was in the situation where, like, last year was my first year, where the first year I taught graduated college. Yeah, so they were out of it. So that just happened. And I actually did receive maybe 2 or 3 emails saying like, hey, I remember this advice you gave me my senior year, and I was 24, 23 when I first started teaching. So again, it's this like weird surreal meta thing where they're just like, whoa, I'm kind of that age now. And they said, you know, I really appreciate the advice. Now, 2 of those 3 were young women, and that actually warmed my heart. I'm curious to see how my young guys are doing, but you know, maybe they're just gonna, like a lot of things in life, maybe the young men are just gonna take a little bit to catch up to the young women in maturity.
Yeah.
I
hope you manage to keep those relationships as the years go. So, because that's a really special thing.
No, it is, and I want to keep those relationships, and it's very important to me to maintain those, and it's hard to maintain those, right, when it's just through text. But you know, I try to maintain, especially the students that I was most close with. I try to maintain those relationships. And yeah, I mean, at the end of my tenure being a high school teacher, I think I tried doing a lot of good work that influences what I'm trying to do now. So I actually left because I was bored teaching. So I will just say that. So the thing I liked the most about teaching was the counseling aspect. And this goes all the way back to what we were talking about before, is you know, I always had an interest in psychology. I was just so damn bored by that first psychology course that I stopped taking them. So it was really about year 2, year 3 that I knew that I didn't want to teach, but I just needed to make a move. and I knew what the move I knew what the move was going to be, and it was going to be in clinical mental health counseling. But that took a second because, well, a few things. I was going to quit my job, so I had to sell that to my wife, and then also, so there's that, and then there's the whole COVID thing that just kind of came out in the middle of that. So once my wife and I, kind of found our footing financially, and I also have another job. I also actually do work. And I was working doing this part-time, but now I'm full-time. I'm the director of religious education at a Catholic church in Cleveland. So, but again, still, I mean, and as you know, I'm sure, I don't care if it's what denomination, the church isn't paying insane bucks. So there's still a financial aspect of it. So, right? Yeah, exactly. So once we figured out the financial piece, moving forward with that, I decided I was gonna pursue a career in mental health counseling, and so that's where I'm at now. So I'm currently in school to be a clinician, and that will end. I'll be able to practice next May. That's when I will technically be able to practice. So I've been, busy with school, busy with work at the church, busy with having a wife, busy with having a little boy.
It's a lot.
And so I really want to tailor my work. Well, again, being a high school teacher really influenced who and what I want to tailor my work around. And I do want to work a lot with men's issues. I want to work a lot. And again, it doesn't just have to be men, but men's issues, whether that's divorce, whether that's pornography addiction, whether that's self-esteem, whether that's anger management, really the whole slew of what you can think of as a men's issue. That's what I really want to focus on. I'm interested with working with veterans, so complex PTSD, things like that. And yeah, that's where I'm really focused at right now in my life, is trying to find my footing in this field, and trying to make a bang in that field when I'm done, and I the board passes me that I can practice psychology in the state of Ohio, right? So, and again, like I said, my experience in high school just made me realize how much of a struggle young boys, young men specifically, have with mental health. And we talk about in my mental health classes, and just in society at large, right? We talk about underrepresented communities, right? It's like a big buzzword going on in the culture, and men are really an underrepresented community in mental health.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure you've seen this as a pastor.
Oh, I'd be really interested to know what percentage of people currently within the voluntary mental health regime, what percentage of patients are women? Because
Paul, it's and I wish I actually had the stats off the top of my head. It is something jarring. I don't want to say it, because then if someone from the ethics board, watch, and I don't think anyone would, they're like, wait, remember that one time when you said a false claim on? It's a lot.
Paul Vanderclay's channel.
Yeah, exactly.
There's Joe Rogan, there's Paul Vanderklay.
Yeah. How did I get to this channel?
Well, we're gonna get there. So that's the question in the back of my mind. But I want to hear the statistic, or at least your vague memory of the statistic with proper disclaimers. That's completely believable, because women are going to go to therapy. Men aren't.
How many counselors or whatever? So counselors, psychologists, clinical social workers. I'm curious. What do you think is the percentage of women?
I'd say it'd have to be like 80, 85%.
It's somewhere. Yeah, it's high up there.
Yeah.
So, and I know, okay, so with this, I also know that I need to be a man of my community, right? So it's like, okay, I'm in Cleveland, and I know who And I know what kind of men are going to counseling in Cleveland, and I know the demographics of who are therapists in Cleveland, and yeah, it's a lot of women. And so, my job and my responsibility, and I've again, this was like a 3-year process of from being a high school teacher to now. So it was a lot of prayer, and prayer, and internal prayer looking, like I said, internally, prayer in the way of having conversations with my wife, right? Because that's a form of prayer, I think. If the Holy Spirit is in that conversation, I think the Holy Spirit was very much in those conversations I had with my wife. Prayer in the conversations I had with my father, with my mother, with my brother, with my sister, with other people in my family, other important people. My job, my mission is, yeah, I need to help men reach apex potential in this Cleveland area. And I need, and this is something that's actually, in this particular community on the internet, this is something that I hear. It's like regain masculinity. But yeah, I want to help men regain masculinity. And I also don't want to preach to them that the brutish or the more machismo notion of masculinity, which I don't, well, here's the deal. I think that could be a part of it, but also I think here's the deal. If you're someone who believes that men and women have particular virtues, well, one virtue of masculinity is to protect. And so what if we just called it that? To protect. You're a man, you protect your family. I don't care how you do it, right? As long as it's ethical, and as long as it's rooted in Christ, okay. Right. So you're not jacking up weights every day. You're not the most gifted on the field. Maybe you're a little more sensitive. Maybe you have a different way of, fine. That's masculine. That's masculinity right there. If you're protecting your family, if you're providing for your family, I don't care how you get it done. That's what we need to recapture. And for so many men, I mean, we have so many damn man children running around. And it's a complete shame. And I go back to my experiences at the high school. And what's your initiation ritual to be a man? And this is obviously not a unique thought. What's your initiation ritual as being a man? How do you know that you're a man? Well, one day I was watching South Park and I fell asleep. And I woke up at 3:30 in the morning. There was a Girls Gone Wild infomercial on, and it kind of piqued my interest. And so now, what also piqued my interest? Paul, you laugh, but there's something true about it, I think. And what's also going to pique my interest? Well, now that infomercial has me now logging onto my computer and looking at a lot of pornography. And so how I know myself as a man, how I know myself sexually, well, first of all, like, because we're just conflating it. We think that, okay, well, the sexual experience that I have is going to be the first sexual experience that I have is going to like define my manhood. And so, yeah, maybe the first sexual experience that I have is through porn. And then you can go down that rabbit hole, and then you get significantly and horribly addicted to pornography. And then that influences your beliefs on what being a man is. That influences your interactions with women. That makes your interactions with women more pornographic. That makes your sex when you get married more pornographic. That makes your fatherhood. And I don't want to be like misconstrued here. So I don't want to say that makes your fatherhood pornographic, but pornographic in the way where you're just clicking things very fast and you're not really paying attention to anything. You're just clicking on something new, something that's going to grab your attention, right? And so, okay, well, how does that translate to being a father? Okay, well, I'm not really going to pay attention to my kid. I'm not really paying attention to my wife. I'm just looking for the new thing. I'm looking for what's catching my attention. It's very real. And pornography is not the only thing plaguing men, right? But it's a big thing, and it's not going to be the only thing that I want to help men with. But it's a big thing, right? This is just one thing, this is the scary part. That's just one thing in the advent of this man-child phenomena that we're in. that we have been in, not even that we're in currently, we have been in this. And so again, I come back to this notion of just rooted in Christ, though. So it's like, how can I help men reach their apex potential through Christ? And I don't even want my counseling to be, I don't even plan on labeling myself as a Catholic counselor. That's the thing. I believe that counseling is godly in nature, right? Helping people reach their most authentic self, having people reach their mental health goals, and that's a godly pursuit. And yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at now. I know I've rambled. I hope I made sense.
You've made plenty of sense. You played plenty of sense. You're going to do fine on YouTube. Well, how did you find me? Because and what, I mean, how did we get here?
Well, I was part of the ethics board for psychology, and no, I'm joking. So how did I find you? Great question. How did we get here? It was maybe like 2 years ago. It, like a lot of people, I think it was through, it wasn't through, well, I guess like the grandfather of it all is always like Peterson. Like Peterson is always like the father Abraham. But I think it was through Jonathan Pageau, more so watching Jonathan Pageau videos than getting to you. I mean, and the interesting conversations that you've had, and I'm sure are going to continue to have with Pageau and Vervaeke and things like that. And I got interested in your channel through them, but also and this is something that I want to talk about when me and you have our second conversation, is just, you're so eclectic. I don't even know how to grip you. Like, where are you at? You're talking about, it's like you started off with Peterson, okay, but now you're talking about cognition. Now you're talking about consciousness. Now you're talking about marriage crisis. You're having these random conversations with guys like me. It's like, oh, he's eclectic. He's interesting. I also like, and it's also been difficult to find a Roman Catholic online crowd. I'm not a big internet guy. That's the thing. I've never been on like the Discord. I've never been on. I've never even been to the website, if it's a website.
There isn't a website. Well,
See,
I guess there's a Discord website where you can download it, but now that's.
I just embarrassed myself for however many people watch this, but. Right. So sure. Okay. So yeah, I'm not a big internet guy. And where was I getting with that? Oh, so it's like, I'm not, because I just don't have time.
Yeah.
I mean, I was coaching, I was teaching, I'm in school,
yeah.
I'm married, I have a kid. I mean, I just don't have, I have the time to like focus on like one platform, and that one platform is going to be either, the podcasts I listen to on Spotify or YouTube. And so I always found you as like a really good, I guess, eclectic voice. And you're having conversations with different people of different denominations. I mean, you're even having conversations with people of different monotheistic faiths. And I think right now we're at as a culture, we probably shouldn't, we shouldn't be like further separating ourselves and just like creating more and more factions and factions. I'm interested in having conversations with anyone who is a follower of Christ. I'm also interested in having conversations with other individuals, right? But as of right now, I'm interested in being a part of that community that it gets invigorated in the Lord. I don't know if it's necessarily a good idea if we're to, be, again, this is like really reductionistic, but be too nitpicky. It's interesting. You've seen how like communities on the left have gotten things they want to get done because they stopped being nitpicky, right? And I wonder sometimes, and again, I'm not trying to like politicize this, but like, I wonder sometimes, like in a Christian framework, it's like, what can we get done if we stop being so nitpicky? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. It's just a thought, I guess. You know, I have no, I don't have, I have an interest, but I don't know if it's right now where I don't necessarily want to get into conversations about, well, what a lot of people here, I guess, in this community, from what I've seen, a lot of Protestants, and then you have like your Orthodox, your Orthodox community within the community. And I'm not gonna. Fine, you're Protestant. Fine, you're Eastern Orthodox. That's great. I'm Roman Catholic. Maybe we shouldn't waste. Then you wouldn't be wasting your time. But maybe our conversation should be about something different, other than, well, how can you be a real follower of Christ and call yourself a Roman Catholic? I am. So I don't know.
Yeah. That's definitely a piece of this that we're choosing to that isn't to say that there aren't that isn't to say there aren't differences. It also isn't to say there aren't interesting things that Protestants and Catholics can't talk about things that we disagree on.
And you need to.
Right.
You need to create a good relationship.
Yep. But I think a lot of it is that we don't want these things to get in the way of the relationship, because there's a lot of other good things that can come through the relationship. And so I think,
yeah, and that's a good rephrasing. I think it's just, that's perfect.
Yeah. Well, so good. Well, why don't you say a little bit about what your channel is going to be about, and then we're going to end this. We're going to end this recording, and then we'll start another recording, and you can do your shtick. How's that sound?
Let's do it.
All right.
So yeah, the channel, just really getting it off the ground. Decided to play up the alliteration. So the gist with Joe. And so what I want this channel to be is, again, is individuals who are watching this, you know that there's a lot of content on YouTube in this community, but also in the communities of other fields such as psychology, theology, and religion. And again, if you're like me, if you have a job, you're in school, if you're a parent, if you're a spouse, you know that staying up to date with these particular communities might be difficult, because the beauty of this community is that they're usually long form. So you can have a podcast or a YouTube session going for 2 hours, an hour and a half. Again, if you're like me, you don't have the time to necessarily watch those. And again, mine's very fragmented. I'm listening to Paul while working out at like 9:30 at night. And at that point, I don't even know what the heck is going on. So the gist with Joe is having interesting thinkers in the fields of psychology, theology, and philosophy come on to explain really what's the gist of their project. And so I'm super excited to ask Paul this again, because he is so eclectic. So I'm wondering if he can, where's the through line?
Right? I'm a little afraid to answer it, because I'm not sure if I know.
Let's find it. So yeah, I encourage you to check it out. Paul is my first guest, but hopefully I get some very interesting thinkers to follow suit. And that's it. That's my pitch.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Well, we'll end recording now, and then we'll do the gist thing.
Awesome.